See you again soon.
Thank you.
Sure thing. A third video of Obamacare architect, Professor Jonathan Gruber, bashing the American voter and bragging about deceiving them. Gruber, a liberal academic elitist who nobody voted for, remember, calling voters stupid while writing the laws that cost all of us a ton of money. Guess who's here? Judge Andrew Napolitano. This is why a lot... Go ahead.
Well, I remember the late, great Bill Buckley once saying, I'd rather be governed by the first 2,000 names in any telephone book than the Harvard or Yale faculty. Because this is the type of mentality, this character is the type of mentality on those faculties.
You went to Princeton.
I know, and you went to the University of... What's that socialist place? London School of Economics.
The most plebeian university in England, I might add.
Well, we know you're plebeian. Plebeian.
Plebeian.
No, what I'm saying is we should not be surprised that he believes this. But the fact that he has said it has opened up such a can of worms for the Democrats on this issue. While the issue of ambiguity of a statute, this statute is before the Supreme Court of the United States.
Yeah, because it's going to come up in those arguments before the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And in all likelihood, Professor Gruber is going to be called to testify on Capitol Hill, isn't he?
Oh, he's certainly going to be called to testify on Capitol Hill. So even though his words, which are now documented, will not be in front of the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court will know that the author of the bill claims it was intentionally written with ambiguous language. The ambiguity that the court will have to construe is whether or not the IRS is permitted to grant tax credits to people who live in states that did not set up exchanges. The law can be read either way.
Okay.
One federal court said yes to the IRS, another federal court said no, the Supreme Court's going to call it. If the Supreme Court says no, and the IRS cannot grant tax credits,
it's all over.
It's all over because the project is unsustainable for a large number of Americans without an IRS tax credit.
Here's my question. If you looked at the Affordable Care Act as written, it was what, 1,900 pages?
2,700 pages.
2,700 pages.
You're being too generous to that.
I am. 2,700 pages. Is that what all modern legislation looks like?
No.
Thousands
of pages. This was extraordinary. But I will tell you, there was a trend in the modern era for members of Congress, both houses, not to read what they vote on.
Yeah.
They get executive summaries, and often the contentious aspects are left out of the summaries. I've seen these summaries.
It's the Professor Grubers of this world who write this stuff.
Yes.
They write it all up.
Once it becomes law, and the gremlins in the bureaucracy are told to enforce it, they don't know and they don't care whether it was read. They have a law and they're going to enforce it. And we're all going to suffer for it.
This annoys me because nobody voted for Professor Gruber. We paid him, but nobody voted for him. And he's the guy who wrote this stuff down and deceived us.
Professor Gruber was paid the same salary as the President of the United States, $400,000 for a year's work.
Right.
And now the Democrats are trying to distance themselves from him. I think you have a tape of Mrs. Pelosi saying he had nothing to do with it. He claims to have written it.
Yes.
He was there when it was crafted.
Yeah, okay. Another example of why voters did elect. Okay, another example of why you don't like government. Here it is. Listen to Nancy Pelosi. This is what we're talking about. Nancy Pelosi answering questions about Professor Gruber. Roll tape.
An interesting set of observations, but one that you skipped is that Mr. Gruber's comments were a year old and he has backtracked from most of them.
But that still engaged them.
Nonetheless, you didn't have it in your narrative. And that's really important, that he doesn't. He's not even advocating the position that he was at some conference and said.
Does she sound credible and confident? Come on.
Look, I'm sorry, but I don't think it's good that we laugh out loud at the former Speaker of the United States.
Why not? Well, she's making a fool
but, you know,
of
that's
herself. She authorized the payment. She and her team hired him. She and her team utilized his words to craft that statute, and now they want to walk back from him because he made a damaging admission.
She's making it sound like a youthful indiscretion. It's only a year old, that statement. But, you know, I have a few Supreme Court justices. I actually met one, thanks to you. Do you think Roberts goes along with the conservative majority on the bench with this latest health care ruling? I mean, does he backstab the conservatives on this?
No,
as he did in the past?
I think just a guess from my general knowledge of the way the court works. I think it'll be the 4 conservatives plus Chief Justice Roberts.
So it's done then.
Stopping the IRS.
But then it's done.
Then it's history.
Because if, well, if you think
deal.
about it, if you can't get that subsidy, remember,
you're
Obamacare
finished.
is just for those people with
Correct.
the subsidy.
This is the functional equivalent of as if the Chief Justice had voted with the conservatives 2 years ago when he voted with the liberals and they found it constitutional because it was a tax.
Yep.
And that's the issue of the ambiguity that the professor spoke about.
Another good segment for the record books, I'd say.
Oh, pleasure.
Princeton?
Plebeian or not.